Good morning to you listeners and welcome to the Morning 4 on this Wednesday, May 29th, 2019. I'm your host, Katie Parsons, and this is our midweek check-in. How are you this week? How are your goals panning out for you, and how are you taking on the challenges that present themselves? I know that I can get so overwhelmed, so stressed about life that it affects my mood, and I do think that's human nature. It's harder to take those negative emotions and turn them around and put in the effort to rise above. But I've found that even when I feel like I'm faking a good mood, spending energy refocusing on positivity and good vibes always pays off. I'm not asking you or myself to be disingenuous, but just to try to rise above the negativity instead of giving into it that wants to pull us down. I hope that you are in that frame of mind today, in the frame of mind to try to do that, and that if you aren't yet, this podcast will help you get there. Do you want a daily reminder to listen to the podcast? Send a text to 57838 with the word podcast. You'll get the link via text each weekday and can listen whenever you want from your phone. Thanks for making me part of your morning routine. So let's get the podcast started with 2 fun facts, 1 feel-good news story, and our daily affirmation. Here we go.
Number 1.
Well, if there's one thing watching Jeopardy for years has taught me, it's this. I really need to brush up on my geography skills. So I did a little bit of researching for some interesting, dare I say, Jeopardy-worthy geography facts to share with you on the podcast. I have a whole bunch, but here's the first. The largest desert in the world is not the Sahara, but is actually Antarctica. A desert, by definition, is arid land that's usually sparse vegetation. And Antarctica is the coldest, windiest, and most isolated continent on Earth, and it's considered a desert because its annual precipitation can be less than 51 millimeters. The Sahara is also a desert, of course, but it is actually only about 1/3 covered by sand, even though when you think of the Sahara, sand is probably like the first thing that comes to mind. The rest of the Sahara is actually covered by gravel-like material and other rocks. I don't think you can ride a camel through Antarctica, but maybe a leopard seal or something? Because as we've learned on previous episodes, polar bears don't live in the Antarctic.
Number 2.
So that was a fun little tidbit, right? So let's keep that going with this geography gem that might blow your mind a little bit this Wednesday. Did you know that the Statue of Liberty is not technically part of New York City? Even though the U.S. Geological Survey has placed Liberty Island in New York's 8th Congressional District, the island actually resides in New Jersey's waters, and is much closer to Jersey's mainland than New York's. If you decided to venture to New Jersey to visit Lady Liberty, you may also be surprised to learn this. She doesn't stand alone. Also housed on Bedloe's Island, and that's the official name of the island where she stands, is a smallpox quarantine station, a Scottish Earl's summer estate, a recruitment center, and now a national park and museum. And that's just scratching the surface on the history surrounding Lady Liberty, of course. So maybe I'll bring in a few more facts about her around the 4th of July. Stay tuned.
Number 3.
Today's feel-good news story is sourced from the Good News Network. Dr. David Freiberg is the founder of Envision Kindness, an organization that encourages people to volunteer, reach out to those in need, and just be generally nicer to each other in daily life. Freiberg did some research into the science behind volunteering, or more specifically, the health benefits it brings to volunteers. Depending on which study he analyzed, death rates for people who regularly volunteered fell 20 to 60% when compared to their peers. That's a pretty big gap, even if you go with the smallest end of the spectrum, that 20% figure. Freiberg admits that there are other variables at play. For example, people with time to volunteer may have higher incomes or more stability at home that boost mental and physical health. Still, studies generally report that the effects of volunteering remain after all these adjustments with reasonable consistency are considered. Following them over time also supports the idea that volunteerism reduces death, or at least makes your life a little longer. One recent and pretty vast European study showed a reduction of about 5 years of aging among people who volunteered. Now, if you're hearing all of this and you're feeling a little overwhelmed at the thought of taking on one more thing in your life like volunteering, Just start small. Find some from-home opportunities to send out emails for a charity or pick one event, just one, to volunteer at for an hour or two. Every minute you volunteer adds up, and every minute I volunteer adds up, and the next person, and so on. Plus, we might all be boosting each other's health in the process.
Number 4.
So let's make this Wednesday count for ourselves and for each other. Repeat after me. Each day brings new chances to be the best version of myself. Today, I will move forward with kindness, confidence, and joy. Be the best you today. I'll see you back here again tomorrow.